Good evening, I'm Jose Cardenas. Did you know children are progressing differently when it comes to key milestones in life? We'll talk about our new report exploring kids, race, and opportunity. And an ASU student is here to talk about her research studying undocumented youth. Plus, an ASU history professor will talk about what happened at a summit addressing Black and Latino relations. All this coming up next on Horizonte.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station.
Thank you for joining us. A report from the Annie E. Casey Foundation explores kids, race, and opportunity. Race for Results, Building a Path to Opportunity for All Children, compares how children are progressing on key milestones across ethnic and racial groups at the state and national level. Here to talk about this report are Children's Action Alliance President and CEO Dana Wolf-Neymark and Joe Garcia, a member of the Children's Action Alliance Board of Directors and Director of the ASU Morrison Institute Latino Public Policy Center. Thank you both for being on Horizonte to talk about this topic. We've talked about it before. Things don't look any better than they have in the past, maybe even worse. Dana, give us a quick summary of the Casey report.
So the Annie E. Casey Foundation puts out the Kids Count rankings every year that rank states on conditions for kids. And Arizona for a long time has been in the bottom 10. And this report now breaks out the data even further, looking at kids in different racial and ethnic groups. So in the context of kids in Arizona being behind, Latino children and American Indian children have even more barriers to success that they're facing.
And as we compare ourselves to the rest of the nation, we're about the worst, near the bottom in both of those categories.
We are in the bottom 7 or 8, certainly for Latino children. And these are indicators at each stage of life for success. They don't guarantee success, they don't guarantee failure. But we know if the conditions are piled up against you, it's very hard to succeed and break out of that.
And Joe, as I indicated when we started this interview, this is not new news, especially to the Morrison Institute with your DROPT report of just a few years ago.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is the many reports that are coming out are saying the same thing. DROPT, which you've talked about on this show, and Amy Pack report recently came out, talked again about Latino education gap being a key factor in whether or not a Latino kid can succeed. But it goes beyond that. There's an economic case, understanding that the workforce coming up, younger Latinos coming up, and we have to decide, gee, we're lucky we have a very great population attribute there that can fill the gap that's being left by largely white population, baby boomers moving into retirement. Mm-hmm. So we have a workforce in place. It just depends on are we going to have a well-paid, highly skilled, highly educated workforce, or are we going to drop down to a second or third tier state with people taking out of the system rather than putting into the system?
Well, Dana, some people would say based on results like this, we already are a second or third tier state, at least when it comes to educating our children, taking care of them. But before we get much more into the significance of the results, tell us a little bit more about what it is the Annie Casey Foundation was measuring.
Sure. They picked 12 indicators, which again are milestones at each stage of life. So they're indicators such as low birth weight, indicators such as participation in preschool for 3 and 4 and 5-year-old children, reading and math scores in elementary school, high school graduation, and poverty. So family income is an indicator, but also your neighborhood income level, because we know that children who live in areas of concentrated poverty have barrier upon barrier in front of them that makes it very hard to break out of that.
And the number, as I recall, for the Latino population was 456 on a scale of 1,000.
356.
356.
Right,
356 on a scale of 1,000.
Correct.
And even worse for American Indians.
Yes, American Indians were a score of 282, very frightening. And again, all of these children are the workforce of the future, are leaders of the future. They're going to be taking care of us in our old age. So we need to pay attention to the conditions for all kids in Arizona.
So Joe, what can we do? Is there anything in the report that offers some guidance about how you remedy this situation?
Well, obviously everyone has a distinct role. Business has a role, education has a role, parents have a role. But I think we need to change the way we look at Latino children today and understand we're talking about Arizonans. These are U.S. citizens that are coming up, future leaders, as Dana points out, future workforce, and we need to almost remove the Latino word from the equation and put Arizonans, because we're talking about the larger predominant population coming up. We're talking about Arizona's future. We're talking about the ability to compete as a state. So we need to look at it as a racial issue, as we need to look upon as that these are Arizonans that represent us. They look like us. They are us. They are Arizona.
And yet people will look at the numbers and they'll say, well, it doesn't really present a fair picture of Arizona because we're a border state, we have a large immigrant population, a large population that's monolingual Spanish. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that, that the face of Arizona is changing. It's going to be browner, and we have to live with that. I mean, many people go to tanning booths to look browner. So apparently brown isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I just think that we need to look at this as an opportunity. It is a crisis, there is no doubt, but there's an opportunity for our state to truly take the ranks of a great state. And the possibility is there, but we have to invest. And I'm always surprised at someone that says that they are against welfare, but yet they're looking to cut education as well. You can't have it both ways. If you're against welfare, you should invest heavily in education, because they play off of each other.
And Dana, in talking about investing in education, that's an issue being debated right now at the state capitol on the budget. More money is going into education, not as much as advocates are asking for.
A little bit more money is going into education if you compare it to a very low base from having cut $1 million over the past few years. An area where no money is going in this budget is early education and child care. And that's an area that just jumps out at you looking at this data, how low our preschool participation is for all Arizona children, and particularly Latino children, much lower than our peers across the country. So that means many children start kindergarten already behind, and it's very hard to ever catch up and meet those education benchmarks and those milestones for success that our whole state is looking for. Our business leaders are looking for educational success. They're looking for that educated workforce. So we better start early, and it's a great opportunity to improve, because if we can expand access to quality early education, we can move the needle on all of these indicators as kids grow up.
Joe, Dana talked about something that's of great concern, and that is the need to get in early. And the concern among many that if you don't, we've lost these kids. If we don't have them by third grade, they're gone.
Absolutely. I mean, that's all the research shows, and all the forums we presented dropped all around the state, and everyone that has spoke it dropped. Teachers, educators, they all say, you know what, you have to do it pre-K. You have to have early childhood education, because the kids otherwise never catch up.
So what do we do, though, about the kids who are past that stage?
Well, obviously there has to be intervention all along the line, but we know that we need to invest early first and then work your way forward. But I think it's important to understand that we're not saying all kids, all Latino kids need to get a college education. We just need to make sure that all kids live up to their full potential. And CTE could play a role in this as well. If you get you a skill, a certificate, it doesn't have to be a college degree. It's just that everyone has post-secondary education and skills, most marketable, so they live up to their full potential as a human being and as a contributor to society.
Well, let's hope that this report, the latest report, gets some attention and that maybe we start dealing with this problem finally. Thank you both for joining us on Horizonte. ASU doctoral student Alyssa Ruth spent the last 7 years studying undocumented youth and local dreamers. Her most recent research focuses on their ability to create a strong network to advocate for themselves and others as they negotiate their unique social and political landscape. Joining me to talk about her research on dreamers is Alyssa Ruth. Alyssa, thanks for joining us on Horizonte. We talk about the last 7 years. That's actually a very significant time period. Why?
Well, because before Proposition 300, which outlawed in-state tuition for undocumented college students, before this time it was very easy for undocumented youth.
And that we're
Well,
going back 7 years for
Right,
when that
7 years,
passed.
exactly. So it was relatively easy for them to go on to college and find access to scholarships to get their college degrees. But after that, Proposition 300 literally tripled the price of tuition for these students, and so it was another barrier for them to attain a college education.
Tripled the tuition, also denied them financial aid.
Exactly, and access to state scholarships. So
Then we're left with a situation where these kids who had been kind of going through the system without much difficulty, all of a sudden they're targeted, would be one way of putting it.
exactly, they were targeted and singled out. What happened is that the universities and the community colleges had to identify who these students were, and but that actually, what I look at, has a positive and an unintended consequence of allowing them to receive a private donor scholarship, which actually made them come together in an orientation session.
Because for the longest time they didn't know who their fellow dreamers, so to speak, the term we use now, who they were.
Exactly. So when I did my master's research in 2006 and 2007, before Proposition 300 was implemented, I could barely find 7 college students to interview. And I was asking high school teachers, I was asking college counselors, and it was very difficult. And when I did find a dreamer and undocumented college students, I would ask them, do you know anybody else in your situation? And they said no.
And I take it wasn't so much that they were being cautious as nobody cared at that time, because it didn't make a difference.
Nobody really knew that they were in school, or that they were actually in our K through 12 public school systems and then trying to go on to college.
So Prop 300 passes.
Yes.
Immediate impact. People are really concerned about this. Tell us what happened then and the difficulties you had, because I read some of your paper, about establishing yourself with these kids and making them trust you enough to tell you some information.
Sure. So I started my research in 2011, so this was about 4 years after Proposition 300 passed, and I had noticed around campus that there were signs for the DREAM Act, and there was a website where students were getting together and they were advocating for themselves. And so I was fortunate to be able to contact this organization and start attending meetings, and then ask for permission to do my research there.
And what did you find?
Well, I found that the group that they had formed actually had positive social network and social capital that they had created. So this allowed them to share information, which included access to scholarships, possible internships, how to start their own business, how to open a bank account, and also about how to know their rights in case they did come in contact with authorities. But then over the time, what this allowed is for them to become undocumented and unafraid, and it allowed for them to come out and state their status in public and demand rights for a pathway to citizenship.
It's one of the things that I think a lot of us notice, that whereas you would think, especially before the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals came out, DACA, that they would be very, very worried about being publicly identified as being here without lawful status. And yet, if anything, it emboldened them. I mean, they were making an issue out of it.
Exactly. So it had this, like I said, there's the protective mechanism, because they knew that their fellow dreamers would be there fighting, calling ICE, calling Department of Homeland Security, their senators, to ask for their release. And once a couple came out and were arrested and were not deported, they started to realize that they were able to come out in more numbers en masse.
And you mentioned in your work, and we made some reference to it here, this is a very unique group because they're kind of in between. They're immigrants themselves, but they came as young kids. They're very acculturated. We're almost out of time. How are they going to be different going forward?
Well, now with DACA, they can work. However, they still are lacking driver's licenses, and the universities are still prohibiting in-state tuition. So the Arizona Board of Regents needs to allow this, and the state of Arizona needs to allow. So right now, I am seeing that they're still fighting for their rights. They're still fighting here in Arizona, and they're still fighting on a national level for comprehensive immigration reform that would not only allow them a pathway to citizenship, but their parents also.
So there's more chapters to be written on this topic.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on Horizonte to talk about it.
Thank you very much.
The Black and Latino Coalition Project works to improve an ongoing dialogue between Blacks and Hispanics. The ASU Center for the Study of Race and Democracy hosted the Black and Latino Coalition Project in March. Trending Race, Shaping and Embracing Black and Latino Identity is a documentary film that was shown at the summit. We'll talk about the community summit in a moment, but first here's a short clip of what the film is about.
How do you answer a question of being? How do you answer a question of existence? Who else am I? You know, who else can you possibly be?
We got a lot of fire, passion, things of that nature. She goes, so I would say that you would be a Chicana. You know what I mean? And I said, are you sure? And she says, well, kind of. So I'm just like, what am I?
At that point, I started calling myself a Chicano. But, you know, quite frankly, it really depends on where I'm at. You know, if I'm in a corporate setting, you know, the term Hispanic, because it's a very safe and culturally it's not very, it doesn't carry a lot of punch.
I think we're all the same. I think if someone says, you know, they're Hispanic or Latina or Mexican, I just say I'm Mexican American.
Hispanic was a term that was made up in the 80s to kind of just put us all up in a lump sum together.
I suppose I'd just say U.S. Latino. I think that probably feels good.
To talk about Black identity, you can't do it in a vacuum, and there is no one Black identity. That has to be a very complicated and nuanced conversation.
With me now to talk about the summit is Dr. Matthew Whitaker, a history professor at Arizona State University and founding director for the ASU Center for the Study of Race and Democracy. Professor Whitaker, good to have you back on Horizonte. Let's talk about the documentary first, because that was kind of what kicked off the summit, as I understand it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to do something that would answer some questions about why Blacks and Latinos historically haven't collaborated to the extent that a lot of people think that they should have or should. And we found that one of the reasons why they didn't is because even within our own communities, there was really a lack of understanding about who we are and where we've come from. And so we did the film to interview people from all walks of life who identify as Black and Latino, to have them talk to us about how their identity was shaped. And what we came away from that is that a lot of the lack of coalition building between the groups really stems from a lot of ignorance about where we've come from, who we are, the fact that you can be Black and Latino at the same time, and those type of issues. And so we wanted to do the film and show the film so we can talk about that before we started talking about the nuts and bolts of what a collaboration would look like, why we would need to have one, and how do you put one together.
So part of the summit was reactions to the film.
Yes.
And what did people say?
It was fascinating. People were very moved by it. We showed it at every single ASU campus, and they were moved because they said that someone finally put something together that addressed something that they had been concerned about, particularly people who lived in the margins. So for instance, I had a number of folks who identified both as Black and Latino come up to me and say, finally, somebody has identified the fact that the two communities are antithetical, that being Dominican is a nationality, but being a person of Afro-Latino descent is really a racial construction. So socially, a social racial construction. So they were very moved by it, and they felt like, you know, something could be done tangibly if more people had this conversation.
And what about those people? And there was a young man in the film clip who says, I'm Black and I'm proud of it, and I have no doubts, and I assume there were other people like that who were saying the same thing about being Latino. What was their reaction to the fact that for many people that's an issue as to what they are, so to speak?
They actually reacted really well to it. I think most of them liked the fact that somebody asked them, and they had an opportunity to communicate that which they considered themselves to be. But what we found is that whether they were Black or Latino or identified as both, all of them shared a similar history and a similar position to the larger society as someone who's grappling with segregation, de facto segregation, discrimination in some ways, and the marginalization that comes with being someone who's outside of the norm or the dominant culture. All of them shared that. And so that was really one of my goals, is to try to tease that out so that we can identify things that they could collaborate on, that we could collaborate on, that were substantive in nature, rather than this kumbaya sort of call for, can't we just get along, brother and sister, et cetera, et cetera.
And did it work? I mean, you had this as kind of setting the stage.
Yeah.
And then you had a series of workshops. Could you tell that the film had informed the discussion in the workshop?
Yes, we could tell, definitely. Because what we started having were substantive conversations during the workshop about things that we have in common. So for instance, America is 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the world's prisoners, 66% of whom are Black and Latino. We, Black and Latinos, occupy the same space when it comes to indices and reports about diabetes, heart disease, educational inequalities and disparities. Whatever the case may be, when it comes to these major indices, we share a lot of that. In addition to positive things about how we put our families together, the value that we put on networking and communalism, those are some similar things that we could partner on.
And did people react to that, saying, I'm surprised that we have these things in common? Were there really people like that?
Some were not surprised as much as happy that someone was actually emphasizing it, rather than emphasizing that which has been pulling us apart. So hardly anyone mentioned the recent tenuous and sort of district race in District 8, right? Did
that surprise you?
That surprised me. Because they were wanting to focus on positives, things that overlap, things that we can work on, because they were more concerned with a solution-based conversation that could bring us together to pool our resources, social, economic, political, and cultural, to address these issues together.
Is that something, though, that people should have been talking about more?
I think so. I think so. You know, one person did say something to me that resonated, and this person said, we're arguing so much over a school board seat and a city council seat, when what we need to be talking about collectively is power. Because numbers ebb and flow. Latinos may be the largest community of color in the United States now, and will be for some time, but that's if everything holds steady. What if immigration demographic changed radically? What's going to happen? We are, by 2050, 2060, going to be probably about half of the population. So we are going to be half of the population, hopefully, of the remaining most powerful country on the planet. So how are we going to lead, Black and Latinos? And how are we going to lead if we have not, 50 years earlier, dealt with problems like how are we going to share a school board seat? Or how are we going to negotiate a city council position? How are we going to lead at the national level 50 years from now, when the majority of us are fighting over one little piece of the pie in an overall big piece of pie?
Now, you did mention to me before we got on the set that there was one person, at least, who brought up the subject, and that was Edward James Olmos.
Yes, he was fascinating. We capped off the day-and-a-half event with a conversation with Edward James Olmos and nationally known activist Lassana Hotep. And Edward James Olmos was awesome. And one of the things that he emphasized is that this notion, this delineation between Blacks and Latinos really is a myth. It's something that's fabricated. It's something that oftentimes, or too often, our leaders fabricate because we really come from the same space. At one point in the program, he said, whether you're Black, Latino, or white or Asian, we all come from Africa. So we all have this sort of, if you go back far enough. And he said he's actually been criticized for saying something like that. But one of the things that he emphasized was our shared humanity. And he said, if we're going to be political in a way that identifies real present concerns. And I've already articulated some of them. The prison system, healthcare, education. You know, talk about that and talk about ways you can come together to solve those particular problems, rather than being very eager to sort of wield numbers on behalf of a community that may be large in number, but not necessarily building the sort of bonds that they should be.
There's so much more to explore on this topic itself, but I want to make sure we talk about something that's coming up very exciting. Forrest Whitaker is going to be here. Tell us about that.
Yeah, he's going to be our inaugural speaker for our Delivering Democracy lecture, which is going to be the Central City signature lecture on participatory democracy. He's an Academy Award-winning actor, filmmaker, and director, but he's also an international humanitarian and philanthropist and activist. And so he's going to come and challenge all of us, particularly our young population, to be more engaged civically and to look towards the political process and community involvement as being an alternative to some of the negative things that pull us away from strengthening our democracy. And so we're really looking forward for him to coming. It's going to be a really, really good event. We already have about 1,600 RSVPs for the event. It's going to be one of those things where if you don't get a seat early on, there might be some problems.
Well, we put some information up on the screen a moment ago.
Yeah.
Is there still time for people to get in?
Yeah, there's time. There's plenty of time. And it's free and open to the public. And we're going to have a media session with student media with young people. He's very concerned about working with young people. And it's going to be an opportunity for people in the central city and all over the valley to come and hear an icon and to do so for free. And to hear an icon talk about the importance of some of the things that we know are important, but it's different when you have actually somebody come in his stature and say, I may be rich, I may be famous, but these are the things that our democracy
April
needs.
22nd.
Yes.
Okay, hopefully we'll be there. That's our show for tonight. From all of us here at 8 in Horizonte, I'm Jose Cardenas. Have a good evening.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.